Hey, welcome back to Storylab. As promised, we're going to be getting back into Leti's story today. And as I was getting ready to share more about what happened that night after Leti recreated her phenomena, I realized something. You know what? I feel like I honestly haven't done that much to make you care about this really incredible person. See, me knowing her myself, I'm already invested. We've already been through the trenches together, and that's why I want to tell you her story and how amazing it is. But just because I care, that doesn't mean I've really given you a reason to do the same. What you should know about Leti isn't just about this strange phenomenon that prevented the death of her boyfriend or that elicits a euphoric experience. It's honestly about this brilliant 22-year-old songstress who learned to sing after the passing of her parents when she was 13. How because of that significant loss, you will never find anyone who will care as much about making you feel like family as she does. Over the weeks and months that we would work together, I got to know her, to learn along with the anime recommendations, and just, she's a One Piece fan. For all the One Piece fans out there, all her anime recommendations, her expert musical knowledge, and her incredible style. At 3 years from when I met her, she was severely codependent. How she would give of herself until there was less than nothing left. And that even though she's taken the time to learn how to set boundaries for herself, it's still really hard for her. That's why she's avoided the music industry, or at least she tried, right? When we were talking during one of our breaks, I asked her why she never got a deal. With her voice, it would be child's play. It would be a piece of cake, quite literally a piece of cake. But you should have seen the look of disgust on her face, or whatever the convergence of emotions that she displayed. It just wasn't positive. She told him about how crazy the music industry was, and she shared her thoughts on how the power of music was being used for gain. She went on a whole rant. She's, I guess, someone that you can consider to be a purist. She truly believed that there would be no way that she would be able to keep true to herself and her singing if she got signed. So then I was like, okay, if that's the case, then why not go the independent route and share her music that way? And that's what got her. I've been around Leti enough by that point in time where I could tell some of her cues. There were just some things that weigh on her, and then seemingly out of the blue, after you kind of ask a question or touch on a topic, you'll see certain things happen, like her shoulders will droop. She looks down and moves her head slightly to one side. It seems like she's checking her boundaries to make sure the answer she gives doesn't cross it. That night, I guess it was all right. She hit me with the That's how she got started. And right then I was like, oh, we are about to get an answer. And she didn't disappoint. She told me that she knew she wouldn't be able to stop herself from giving her fans all of her. And honestly, I thought that was a great reason. And then I was glad that she was doing what felt right to her. But man, inside, I was, since I had already heard her sing extensively, I felt bad. There was almost like a sense of lament. It was like finding an oasis, a garden paradise of incomparable beauty in a vast wasteland. But you can't tell a single thirsty soul about where it is because you know exactly what would happen. But for Leti, that's exactly where Bastian comes in. Leti performs specific acoustics for his tracks, and he protects her through anonymity. She gets to have her creative outlet, and Bastian protects her peace, never forcing her in a direction she doesn't want to go, but he does challenge her technique and expression, helping her hone her craft. It's not You can have like a really great singing voice, but that's not all music making is. Right? Just because you know how to sing doesn't mean that you know how to write or how to compose or how to arrange. And those were the things that Bastian was helping Leti with. But to be honest, it was really a cheat code for Bastian, because even Leti humming on a track is enough to make it go number one. But Leti didn't care though. She was good doing what she could and with her relationship. When someone is in love, you just notice how they talk about someone. That's how Leti talked about Bastian. She loved that guy. And it was clear the one thing that he couldn't do on her watch was die. That's why the night she recreated the phenomenon, we were able to go through that entire crazy process, and we were able to recreate it. And I experienced what happened that night, the same night that she saved Bastian's life, being able to experience that exact same thing. I knew it was real. She definitely did. She definitely saved Bastian's life. What was unfortunate was that it also meant it would be her undoing. There was no way that someone like Leti with an ability like that would not devote her whole life to healing people, even if it meant risking her own. A few days after that night, after the night we recreated the phenomenon, I saw it in her eyes when Sahara finally told her the truth. It took Leti 2 whole days to stay awake longer than a few hours. And well, instead of meeting at the studio, we met at Sahara's place, where she was able to keep an eye on Leti as she recovered. And well, for me, up until that time, I hadn't spoken with Sahara except to periodically check in on Leti. I still thought that not taking her to the hospital was just a really bad idea. Not to mention, I had gone through this reality-defining experience, and then shortly after, Sahara basically told me that my life was in danger. It was a lot, man. It was really overwhelming. So I took the 2 days, and when Leti was finally awake, I was ready for answers, or so I thought I was. "You're a siren," Sahara said directly. Yeah, I know, she was really to the point here. Also, before I continue, to that point, Sahara had not been the same since that night. Her whole mood was different. Her disposition has switched to dispassionate. So everything she said had this directedness to it that was just difficult to stomach at times. I looked at Leti and then back at Sahara. When Leti didn't respond, I jumped in. What do you mean by that? What do you mean that she's a siren? This is a question that any sane person would ask. Sahara was focused on Leti, who was on the couch ensconced in a blanket, staring back at Sahara, not sure on how to respond. Okay. A siren is someone with the ability to initiate a specific call and response reaction in the brain with the use of their voice. At least that's the scientific definition. Like all myths, they're based in some kernel of the truth. This is what Sahara was sharing with us. Sahara sighed and then stood up. She paced while she told us the history of the sirens, and it went a little something like this. Around 850 BC, there was a group of performers and entertainers, but most people at the time considered them to be mystics or shaman, because when they sang, people would mysteriously be cured of their illnesses, whether it was mental, physical, or emotional. Their songs would bring people relief from their pain. Kings, regents, queens, vassals all wanted these performers as part of their court, but they were a traveling crew believing their gift was for everyone they came across. Over time, their group steadily grew, and there were people within their group who wanted to better understand their gift, testing how far they could push it. But with the mysticism of the time, some believed their gifts were given by deities, and they didn't want to anger them by using their gifts other than helping people that they came across. A huge fight broke out, and those who wanted to test their abilities left the group while others moved on. The elders of, we'll just say sirens. They weren't known as sirens at the time, but the siren group told those who wanted to leave that they should go somewhere remote where they wouldn't be known by the same name and made them swear to never perform with the intent to do harm. Those who left agreed and found a remote island off the coast of Greece, but never fully intended to keep up their end of the agreement. They practiced day and night on their skills. Was it just healing, or could they make the body do other things? Is it just humans, or could it work on animals? To what extent could they heal? They pushed the boundaries of their abilities, including how far their voices could reach, how far could others hear or be influenced by their voices. As the knowledge of their skills grew, so did their appetites to use it. Similar to legend, they would cause ships to dock on their island for provisions, and they used the crew from these ships for their perverse experiments of healing and manipulation. And they would leave just enough alive to set sail again and then wreck their ships on a far out reef to keep their small faction a secret. Soon, however, reports of these shipwrecks reached the mainland from where these boats had initially set sail. The sons of fathers lost at sea were determined to find out the cause for these mysterious shipwrecks. So, a group of 30 young men set sail on the same course as many of their fathers had gone and found the remnants of ships around a specific island. And armed to the teeth, they made landfall. Now, it wasn't long before they found the small village in the heart of the island. So they sent 2 men from their group to see if the villagers had seen or heard anything about their fathers, or perhaps maybe if their fathers, marooned on this island, were spending time with these villagers trying to figure a way back home. And so while they sent these 2 men, a few of them watched from a ridge nearby. What they saw chilled them to the bone. The way that Sahara was speaking, it didn't feel like this was a myth. It felt like this is what really happened. From a distance, they heard a melodious voice. Then one of the young men struck down the other, seemingly without hesitation, and after he did so, pointed his bloodied sword toward where the onlookers were hidden. The men on the ridge quickly retreated and made their way back to the boat and told the others with them to immediately set sail, that the people on the island were demons. While many feared their words, others were hardened by it. They were sure it was these people that had killed their fathers. So what they did was they set sail to the other side of the island, and 3 days later, under the cover of darkness, snuck back onto the island. They found the small village and silently worked their way through every home, basically unaliving every inhabitant. And in a special hut, they actually found their friend, the one who struck down the other. There was blood everywhere, but there wasn't a single wound on him. When they tried to wake him, he screamed and began to fight against them. But then the moment that he realized it was his friends, his fright turned to terror. He told his friends to leave and never come back. But by that time, it was already too late. The remaining villagers were awake, and when they saw what these men had done, they turned their abilities on them in the worst way. Some of these gifted people caused a few of these young men's brains to liquefy in their heads, dropping them as soon as their voices had reached them. For some, they turned them against one another, causing them to drive their swords through one another. One of the men was struck in the ear, and the moment he received some of his senses back. Whatever the villagers were singing had lost a little bit of its effect, but only for a moment. In that time, he took his sword and took off his other ear. Silence. There was nothing but silence and pain. The spell was broken. With what was left of his strength, he ran through the last of the villagers still alive. The few legends that captured what happened on this island mentioned that it seemed that he relished the panic in their faces when he realized their song had no effect on him any longer. Out of the 30 young men who made it to that island, only 3 made it out alive. Sahara finally sat down but her intensity only seemed to grow. She looked at Leti and then at me and then back at Leti. Warm light from the window to Sahara's right cast a golden glow in the room that was the opposite of the feeling inside of it. Those three who survived made it their life's mission to find and eliminate sirens. For hundreds of years, they've targeted and hunted down anyone, anyone that could be a siren, committing their lives to silence through self-inflicted deafness to avoid being swayed by a siren song. Several times throughout history, they've gotten dangerously close to completely exterminating sirens. And now, they may be as close as they have ever been to their goal. Sahara then took a deep breath. You may be the last one, Leti. Suddenly, so many things began to fall into place. The phenomena, Leti saving Bastian's life, her seemingly effortless Grammy-winning voice, Sahara's disposition, and uncanny knowledge of what we needed to do. Not to mention her warning the other night. Even though what Sahara shared was absurd, the events of the last few days, coupled with the understanding that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, what was absurd was quickly becoming sane. Leti sat there the entire time, unmoved. If there was anything happening in her mind, I wouldn't have known it. What does this all mean? Why are you sharing this now? Leti asked this after a few minutes. Because I need you to understand what will happen if you use your gift. Before Sahara could continue, though, I had to ask, Sir, how can you be so certain that that's what will happen? How do you even know that these siren hunters still exist? I couldn't wrap my head around how something like this could have survived for over nearly 3,000 years. Where I thought there would be an academic answer from Sahara, there was something else entirely. I saw the dam break. I saw the wall of scientific fact and observable data and practicality be reduced to rubble under the force of emotions that crashed against the inside of her eyes. As she forced her face to keep as many tears from falling as she possibly could. Leti saw it too. But instead of questioning, there was a realization that gripped her so suddenly. It immediately took all the strength out of her body. At any given moment, her muscles would contract and she would become a shapeless mass. She could barely form a whisper of what she then knew. But when she shared it, in that room where a pin could drop and it would be deafening, her words evaporated the moment they fell from her heart and out of her mouth. It's because they're the reason my mom and dad are gone. In the stillness of that truth, panic seized at Leti's heart faster than her lungs could bring air in. But before her breath could hitch for a fourth time, Sahara administered a sedative, and just as quickly as it had started, it was over, and Leti was fast asleep. All right, that's episode 3 of Leti's story, her getting the history of who she is, and now it's actually unlocking some deeper, harder truths. So if you've enjoyed this episode, I hope that you you subscribe, you enable notifications so you can keep up with this series. I think I will be pivoting back to Javius, but I'm not entirely certain. We might just keep going on with Leti's story and get back to Javius' story when it's most appropriate. But yeah, feel free to join us for the next episode. Until the next time, take care.